All right, as I'm checking out the news and everything, one, I found that guy's channel Laser Pig. Just starting to take a quick look. See, he was talked about on the podcast of the Lotus Eaters as somebody with some background in the military who it can then present some ideas that, because I as well, there's a lot of stuff about what's going on in Ukraine, like the actual invasion, that there, to me, there's stuff Salty Cracker has brought up that I'm like, yeah, that's this isn't like what we did. We blew like all kinds of shit up. It was insane looking. Like, it was presented, might as well have had music to it on CNN. Yeah. So one of the things I was just thinking about. Okay, Reinhard Gehlen of Foreign Armies East, the Waffen SS Foreign Armies East. It was a Waffen SS detachment, or it was under that, but it was Foreign Armies East, and his intelligence group was recruited so that they became a major part of the Cold War fight, constructed all of Germany's intelligence after the war. So this was like Hitler's East intelligence man, but Hitler, he didn't like the party wise, he didn't like the Nazis. He did his job as a German in the armed forces, is kind of the way he puts it out there. But like, he doesn't even talk about Dr. Globka in any other fashion than he met Dr. Globka and they were discussing Globke, Hans Globke, who wrote the Nuremberg laws. So he's acting like this is just a normal thing. So all these guys are doctors. So that's also the joke that you get out of Doctor Strangelove. Doctor, if I remember right, is in Strangelove. Herr Doctor. And he even says that, Reinhard Gehlen even says that he just likes that's what would happen, is that you would just refer to somebody as Herr Doctor. So the thing is, he ends up with a bunch of his network. So when we recruited the Ukrainian Nazis, they became a major part of our intelligence services. So an example of this that's independent of what I'm saying is the guy who wrote the Necronomicon. The dude who wrote the Necronomicon, at one point in his early 20s, he recounts this crazy story where he's like, I was recruited by the CIA, and people are like, what? And he's like, yeah, here's the story. And he ends up at becoming a priest for the White Ruthenian Church. The White Ruthenian Church, it's just start looking it up. Just Google, see what you find. Look up a few things on it. But it comes up in America's Nazi Secrets, that White Ruthenia, so that's White Russia. Belarus, I think, is also, that it's a reference to the actual, I think, area of Belarus. But I'm sure some of you could clarify precisely and more precisely what the term refers to. So this White Ruthenian Church was being used to smuggle weapons to forces of independence against the communists throughout the Eastern Bloc, is the idea that the guy from the Necronomicon writes. So it turns out when Johann Loftus writes America's Nazi Secrets, and he discusses Reinhard Gehlen, and now I haven't gotten to this part in Reinhard Gehlen's memoirs, The Service, the memoirs of Reinhard Gehlen. I haven't gotten to the part where he supposedly trained Gaddafi's intelligence service. He was a part of the establishment of the ISI in Pakistan. I'm guessing he had to have had something to do with Turkey, being that Turkey and Germany's relationship, and how important that is to Germany, and that's a long historical relationship. Iraq, Saddam Hussein's intelligence services, from what I understand, is that it was he possibly Saddam Hussein, or it was Iraq's intelligence services, and I believe also Egypt's intelligence service. Reinhard Gehlen was just a big part of. He had a huge network, and a big part of this comes from the German diaspora of, and this is something that I found was, how did fascism get into the Islamic world? And it was the relationship they had with the Germans, actually, that the German allegiance, and then this educated class of Germans who brings the idea of education in German schools and German education to the Islamic world, and that they were the big deal. Germany was the big deal. So it was, and this is would be the 19 teens, 1920s. This is when you get, like, say, the Statue of Liberty, because it was originally built for the Suez Canal. This is when Masonry is huge within the Ummah. You could find lots of photos in that era of before World War One and after World War One of Freemasons. You put it like Freemason Lodge, Cairo, Freemason Lodge. You just put in big names, big cities, Damascus, stuff like that. I think even places like Fallujah, like places that, like, you would, like, let's just throw that in there, and that you'll find, like, photos somewhere, of, and it decked out, everybody decked out in suits, looking great, fezzes everywhere. So the thing that we're seeing now is, okay, so nobody knows this, like, people like Alex Jones kind of people with a military background. Their crazy uncle told them this. Their dad, who hates commies, it told them this, and calls the Nazis and the commies, they're just all, all of them, they're all cut from the same cloth, and stuff. And of course he would understand, because it's just, sometimes people have a hard time explaining this big idea that was beefsteak commies or something, or beefsteak Nazis or beefsteak commies. If you gave a communist a steak, it would take you the length of time it took them to eat it, to talk them into joining the Nazi party. And that this was actually a very, that this is corroborated by F.A. Hayek, with writings at the time by people who were in those movements. And so a big part of, I think, what we're seeing is a lot of people who, they can't deal with what they hid and what they did to achieve prosperity. I think, like France can't deal with, no, the teachers' union went along with the Vichy. The Vichy couldn't have happened without the teachers' union going along with it. In America, the active, looking aside, and at the time of the build up to World War II, the giant march on the Michigan Magnificent Mile, the Ku Klux Klan, I think it was 5 million men. And that this would have been associated with the Democratic Party. I think that they can't handle that. I think they really have a hard time with this. So it's just something I'm starting to get the feeling of, that everybody's exposing how they have a really, really, really hard time writing history so that they were the good guys, when what it took after the war the spoils, all that talent. Why hang all of them? See, we could cast the ring into the fire, but think of the good I could do with it. It is precious to me. It's precious, this secret. Because suddenly people would want an entirely different kind of way of life. They would say, if this is what it takes to have the kind of prosperity that we enjoy, if it takes having this secret, this burden now on us, and that it keeps coming home to roost in one way or another. To me, now once knowing all these different intelligence services that Reinhard Gehlen had once trained, and that it's like one after another we keep taking people down, or maybe failing to take down a government, that Reinhard Gehlen had something to do with this person knows where our bodies are buried, or our grandparents' bodies are buried. But most importantly, they know, the Democrats know this secret. Maybe all the Republicans do, but I think, like a lot of conservatives, they're Boy Scouts, too many of them. They couldn't believe something like that until they would see the papers. But also, I think a lot of them know. And that's one of these things, like there will come a time. Somebody like Rand Paul or Jim Jordan, I think, and they're the types that it's like, no, a time is coming for it. Don't worry. A time is coming for us to discuss this. So, just some thoughts that I was having late at night before I had to go to bed. So I was watching Ukraine and the George Floyd Effect by podcast of Lotus Eaters. Have a good night.